Can you hear us, Johnny?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. The minutes from the last budget meeting, we have them. Is there a motion to accept?
I make a motion.
Okay. Motion?
Second.
All right. Motion second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Any public comment? None. Okay. Bobby, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Sure. So we have one budget amendment for the committee to review this morning. This is related to the Metro Drug Fund. You may remember last year, both the city and the county and the Attorney General's office came to an agreement to kind of transition the Metro Drug Fund to a judicial district-wide drug fund. And the AG's office got a grant to help fund some of that. And the way the agreement worked is last year, the city and the county, through the Metro Drug Fund, agreed to give seed money to the new drug fund of, I think it was $40,000, if I remember correctly. And what the plan was to complete the FY23 audit, which is complete now, look at the fund balance that remains in the Metro Drug Fund, leave an amount that the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department agree needs to be left in there in order to take care of, if the court rules that some seizure money has to go back to the person that was the funds were received from, we'll need to be able to repay that, right?
Yeah.
Because some of those cases take years to resolve. So with that said, we've working with the Police Department and the Sheriff's Department, they've agreed that we need to leave $30,000 in there for that purpose. So there's $33,841.44 that is available to be dispersed equally. Half will go to the Police Department Drug Fund, half will go to the Sheriff's Department. And this was not, we actually did not have a budget for the Metro Drug Fund this year, so it's necessary to approve this budget amendment to appropriate that money. So that's what this budget amendment is. So
Move we approve.
Second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
all right, thank you. I was hoping, and it looks like we're going to be able to focus primarily on a budget update for the budget committee today. And so before we get into that, let me just share a quick update about the Tyler Munis system. Not going to go through the things we've shared with you before. The good news is we now have completed the import into the Tyler Munis system of the FY23 audit trial balance. Well, that may sound simple enough, push a button, but trust me, it's not. Plus, we had to migrate from the old legacy chart of accounts to the new chart of accounts. But in any event, we've completed that now, which is a really major step. So now we actually have access to work in the new Tyler Munis system for FY24. Now, since last July, we have been processing transactions and capturing data from all the things you would expect: the revenue office, the payroll system, the AP system, journal entries, the whole 9 yards. We just had nowhere to post it. Well, now we do. So we are hastily trying to get all of this data that we've captured since July from two different systems, and we'll still be working in two different systems. Anyway, trying to get all of that into the new Tyler Munis system so that we can then generate year-to-date for FY24 and quantify actual results, which would allow us to do some projections as far as annualized for this year, which is normally something we have at this point as we head down the trail of next year's budget. So we don't have that today. We're not going to have that Monday and Tuesday at the budget hearings, but we are well on our way now, finally, to being able to capture that data. That's a work in progress. I did want to update the budget committee. As you know, we've gotten the process and the calendar is a little different than it's been historically. The budget hearings, which is where the council members are here and department heads are scheduled to come in and make some presentation and answer some questions, just kind of information sharing event. That's scheduled for next Monday and Tuesday. We will probably end up talking about some information at that particular meeting, and I wanted you, at the Budget Committee, to see and learn about some of that before next Monday or Tuesday. So that's kind of what I'm going to take you through today. All right, I've tried to, I'm going to hand out a bunch of paper as we go along here. But I've tried to kind of organize this. I didn't want to hand out all this paper at one time, because that could get confusing. I'm just going to start it that way. So the first thing would like to talk to you all about is some revenue considerations for next year. So this first work paper that's making its way around is some information about property taxes. This is kind of fresh from the appraiser's office. I prepared, and by the way, I've got the reports themselves from the appraiser's office, but that's a little bit too much for us to get into. So I've prepared a very simple spreadsheet here of what the 2024 tax numbers look like for the city today, right? So the 2024 taxes are actually fund our FY25 budget. So you can see in the first column is the same information for 23, and then the information for 24 this year. And without getting into the weeds too much, look at the third line down, total assessed value. So, you got appraised value, and then commercial property and residential property is assessed at certain percentages. And that number is for next year right now is showing a 0.4% increase year over year. Now, I went ahead and kind of did the math so you'll have a good feel on how property taxes work. So the property tax rate is per $100 of assessed value, right? So I computed how many intervals of $100 are there. I multiplied it times the tax rate of 1.6114. Applied our historical collection percentage, which is about 97%, and this would suggest that we're going to have a net increase in property taxes, at the collection rate of about $4.6 million year over year. I did, just for your information, I did go ahead. I know a lot of people like to think about a penny's worth of tax collections, how much it generates. For next year, it's about $249,600. Now, I have a follow-up question for the assessor's office. I'm gonna call your attention to the second line on here where it says total assessment of personal property. So you got real property, land and buildings, and you got tangible personal property, and you see a significant decrease in that from last year. And if you were to look at the reports, actually the assessed value has gone up a little bit from last year, but there's something called an equalization ratio that's applied to that. And I'm not an appraiser. Judy, you may know more this as a real estate person, but if you go back and look, and basically what that measures is kind of the assessed value to the full market value. It's kind of what it measures, and it's applied to the assessed value. And back in 2023, just coming off a reappraisal process, that assessed ratio was 100%. This year, now a year later, that assessed ratio is, I wrote it down somewhere, 0.7857, which that seems like a significant decrease to me, and I do plan to follow up with Kevin Mills over in the assessor's office. But this is kind of where we are on property taxes today. So any questions Mike could answer about that? So kind of the takeaway from that is, I think, we have some growth in property taxes historically, year over year, and we have some this year. I think we would have, want to understand a little better why it's not higher than that. And so we'll follow up with the assessor's office on that. Okay.
Bobby, my only question
Sure.
would be, and I've asked this previously, is this about the average increase that we were projecting? No.
I would say, it's probably, the period of time that I've been here, I would say it's a little bit less than what we've, historically done, slightly less, so, all right, okay. All right, I'm gonna pass around something now that for you to look at regarding state shared revenues. This is hot off the press from, our friends at MTS and the comptroller's office. So, so the way, most, state shared revenues is allocated is on a per capita basis to cities and counties. So I've kind of listed the ones that I've got information on today. For instance, state sales tax, a big one, an important one. Last year, for the current budget year, is $120 per capita. Next year, it's $121.50. That's about a 1% increase in state sales tax. Historically, we've elected to kind of follow the state's recommendations on sales tax increases. These numbers may possibly be updated by the state by the time we get through, but these are what they are. Maybe not. These are what they are today. Next one is state beer tax. You can see no increase there. Special petroleum products tax, no increase there. TVA gross receipt tax, there's a 2% increase. Sports betting. So what, a year or two ago now, I guess, the state approved gaming on sporting events, and it's kind of skyrocketed. You can see last year that was a kind of estimated to be about $1 per capita. This year it's $1.45 per capita. Gas and motor fuel tax, $35 last year, $35.20 this year. About a 0.5% increase. Now, I do have a question, and Mayor, you may know the answer to this. There's a line item on here called transportation modernization. This year, there was no allocation specific to that. Last year, there's a 31 cent per capita this year.
That's the new
Yeah.
bill that
All right.
on choice lanes.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of for the choice lanes and on the interstate system. What I'm not sure about though is, for instance, there's multiple gas and petroleum taxes that go toward roads. I don't know if they pulled that out or if this is really new.
I think that's separate from the gas tax.
I think it's just, but I think is it not a reallocation of the total though, or is it an actual tax increase?
It may be a reallocation.
That's what I thought. But anyway.
From what is passed on from an electric vehicle?
Well,
No?
no, the way I understand it, and the mayor may know more, as described, this was, roads in Tennessee are kind of funded through gas taxes, right?
Mhm.
And petroleum taxes and that type of thing. So this is either, some type of increase in those taxes, and we're gonna get to share in that at 35 cents per capita, or it's a
Okay.
reallocation of what was the current tax. I'm just not 100%
Okay.
sure about that, but we'll try to find that out.
So when it's something like this, will they require us to spend that back on like roads, or we just get to use that as?
Some of these funds are, what we have to demonstrate is that, like on street maintenance, that we spent more than this,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah, but that's kind of how that works. So I think the takeaway from the property tax so far, the takeaway from the state shared revenue tax, particularly sales tax, it's, there's various kind of marginal increases. It's kind of flat to
Mhm.
marginal increases for next year. Any questions, maybe about that? Now, I would remind you, this changed, as we move through the next, few weeks. Now, on the revenue side too, we have started the process of talking with certain departments that have department-specific revenues, for instance, public facilities. They generate, you know, revenue for the use of the building department, for permits and inspections. They generate a lot of money, actually. The planning department. So that process is ongoing right now. We've made those inquiries, and the departments are thinking about it. We may learn more about that Monday and Tuesday when we have the budget hearings. And I would anticipate, I think we would expect probably some growth, you know, in those revenues, although the building department's had a big year this year. So anyway, we're working on the department-specific revenues as well. Grants. We've got work to do on grants to kind of get our arms around all the grants, and we just don't have that today. But we'll have that before we get through. And generally, you know, grants are kind of a break-even situation. Some of them you can allocate a little bit of overhead expense to the grant, but most of them, the funds have to be spent on the grant. So it's really not a bottom line issue. And I would just say regarding the ARPA fund, the way that works, you know, we've got the cash already. We only get to recognize the revenue associated when it's expended. So when we get to the end of the budget this year and we determine what ARPA funds have not been spent this year and they're rebudgeted for next year, the revenue and expense will be the same. So that's kind of how that works. Okay. Now let's talk about expenses. Talk about staffing and salaries first. So there's several reports in here. So this is one, you know, take one whole package. So everybody wants to.
All right, okay.
Yeah. And let me make a few comments about where we are. So let me tell you first off what you have in your the information I just got through giving you. The first page is just a little summary that I prepared earlier this morning. We had a council member ask from HR like some historical numbers on patient count. You know, I've been there.
Bunch of years.
Overlooked that. That slipped. Although patient count is really important to the hospital. In any event, on an employee count, so HR pulled some numbers together very promptly, and you can see that's the first 3 or 4 lines on this piece of paper. They went all the way back to 21, 22, 23, and 24, and kind of broke it down full-time, part-time, and seasonal. Now, I'm not 100% sure exactly how HR did that, or like exactly what point in the year. Is at the beginning, a middle point, end of the year, or an average? I'm really not 100% sure exactly how they did that. But we'll be working with HR to understand that even better. And what you see down at the bottom, I'm going to share with you here in a second. In your packet, you got a couple of budget spreadsheets, one from last year and one from this year, right? So on that information, we pulled off this same data point, you know, of full-time, part-time positions. So the number under the budget spreadsheet for FY24, that was a budgeted number for FY24. I should have put that on there. And the number for FY25, again, is a budgeted number that's been requested at this particular point in time. That will unlikely be, I would guess, the final budgeted number, but that's what's been requested at this point. So if you look, if you just turn a page there, you'll see FY24 salary budget worksheet is the first report. This is several pages long, and if you were to see that entire spreadsheet, it's about this wide, because that's what we use to calculate the salaries and the benefits and so forth. So we've taken names off of here, obviously, but you've got the various departments for the city, and you can see the positions. Why don't you flip through there and find FY25, because it's more pertinent to our discussion today. find FY 25, wherever it is. Okay. FY 25, as you're looking at that one, and
Yeah.
remember that the employee count or the position count off these reports, I've already pulled that off for you and put it on this summary sheet. But when you look at FY 24, you see some positions that were highlighted in yellow, and then when you look at FY 25, you see some that are highlighted in green. So what both of those represent, like this year, for instance, a couple of pay periods ago, we grabbed a snapshot of what employees we had. Obviously, that can change daily. You know, people resign, people retire, we hire new people, whatever. But we're in the process of working with HR to update that as we move through this, right? So the ones in green for FY 25 are made up of a couple of things. It can be someone that we've hired, let's just say, the last couple of weeks. It can be a brand-new position that's requested for next year. It can be, there was a budgeted position for this year that happens to be vacant right now. So that's kind of how you interpret this information. Now, so really, what we have today, as I've described, is really just kind of some staffing reports in terms of numbers of position. Question, yes, sir.
On, like, this is the building department, 12 currently and 11 in the budget for next year? Just,
We have one leaving, and so they're going to cross-train more.
okay,
He reviews plans, and so they're gonna cross-train, so they have, one that can review plans and also do inspections as well.
okay.
So those are good questions. That's a good question. And those will be some of the type of questions that we would expect at the budget hearings come Monday and Tuesday. Now, let me share with you some more information about salaries and benefits. So what we've got here are numbers of positions. It's kind of a work in progress, you know, at this point. So we're currently working with the mayor's office and with the Human Resource Department regarding the details of any plans for compensation increases in next year's budget. So at some point soon, we'll get that feedback from HR, and that will give us the opportunity then to go into the spreadsheet and input rates, right? And allow us to compute the salaries. Another thing we do is like longevity pay at the city. We have people who are fortunate enough to make that longevity threshold every year. So we'll be able to take that kind of information and compute the salaries for next year. Then we can take that information and compute our benefit cost, our FICA cost, for instance, our TCRS, which is a percent of salary, the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System cost for next year. And also on the benefit line, which is kind of part of this massive spreadsheet, has to do with the cost of our health plan next year. And in talking with Stacy Stone, the folks in HR recently, and this is the thinking on some numbers today, and working with our consultant on our health plan, at least today, it looks like the trend increase on claims paid is about 5% year over year. On the surface, it sounds reasonable to me. I think it would, if we were to be able to stick to 5%, that would be good. But that's the thinking now. You may be interested to know that's about between $380,000 and $400,000 more in the cost of our health plan for next year. Vision, it's about a 3% trend line right now, which would be about $10,000 or $15,000. I'm sorry, that's dental. And on vision right now, we're fully insured on vision, so it's just a premium that we pay. So no increase projected there right now. Now, I would point out that obviously the numbers related to the health plan are impacted significantly by two variables. You know, how many employees do we have? And their utilization. and also by the premium contributions from employees. So, you know, the utilization,
Not age? Age is not.
well,
a
yeah,
factor.
age as
Okay.
well, absolutely. Health, wellness, health, age, you're exactly right. All of that impacts the utilization, right? But it kind of starts with an employee count and, you know, and how many elect family plans or single plans, that type of thing. So right now, until those numbers are finalized in the budget, and I'm not aware, you know, we made some changes in our health plan last year for this current fiscal year. And talking with Stacy, there could be some things that we might like to consider doing, but right now, plan design changes, right? Right now, none of that is factored in here, nor are any consideration about changes in employee premiums, up or down, is not factored into these numbers as well, because kind of the way it works, you know, we got the claims paid, the cost of our health plan, we got the administrative cost of our health plan, right? And then we've got contributions from employees through premiums, so, you know, and then the city pays the rest. So it's kind of a moving number until we get a little bit further along in the budget, but I wanted to share with you kind of where we are, today. So any questions about salaries, benefits?
I was just noticing we have a parking meter attendant.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
The meter fairy, basically.
Yeah, they go through and track, they have a scanner, they track the license plates, 2-hour limit, parking downtown. They also check in all of the other public parking lots, you know, for people parking in handicapped spots.
No more chalk.
Now, it's federal law, doesn't allow that.
Yeah, really?
The judge ruled that unconstitutional back in 2019.
Okay.
Wait, what? What did he?
I said no more chalk.
Yeah,
They
chalk.
said the chalk was unconstitutional?
Yep.
Lord. Chalk.
Okay.
Only on sidewalks.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next category of our expenses I'd like to speak to just for a minute, and I really don't have a handout, do not have a handout related to this, would be non-salary and benefit operating costs, right? So salary and benefit costs are the biggest portion of our expenses, but the non-salary and benefit operating costs. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we are working hard to have the data to share with department heads. We've got FY '23 data, I'll show you some of that here in a second. But to provide to them some good information on their expenses this year, year to date. And so that they can help us annualize that, and they kind of, it'll be a basis for them to understand what they want to ask for next year. Now, we don't have that today, but that's kind of how the process is working. And I've asked the department heads, or I've suggested to the department heads that come Monday and Tuesday at the budget hearings, if they're aware of some significant or material increase above normal operations related to this type of expense, you know, they need to be prepared to kind of talk about it Monday. So we may learn more about this again on Monday and Tuesday. We're all familiar with inflation. It's certainly down this year from where it was a year ago, but it's still here. And I would expect that as we work through the budget, we'll have to look closely at the impact of inflation in certain areas. Some of you may be familiar, others may not be. Essentially, several years ago, the city agreed to that jointly funded agencies between the city and the county, that would kind of work its way up through the county's budget process and the county's budget committee. We don't have those numbers today, and unfortunately, it's usually the very last minute that we actually get those numbers. But what we will do is we kind of pull our stuff together here in the next few days and weeks. We'll put placeholders in there, you know, for what we think that might be, and then we'll have to wait for the county them to complete their budget process, and then we'll get the final numbers. There are certain agencies and certain other kinds of department-specific expense that, we collectively, and I'm kind of working on, we're kind of working on together. For instance, funding for JTA, the Transit Authority, they sent, some preliminary budget numbers over for us to look at, a couple of days ago. The annual funding of the TIF districts here, that calculation is, we're between, the assessor's office and Stan up in the planning department and myself, those numbers are being calculated as we speak right now. So, and they'll be funded, and, that will give us an indication of what the cost was this year. We'll kind of look at it and think, well, you know, we need to make this kind of estimate for the budget next year. And there are other kind of non-department specific, some of which we work very closely with the mayor's office on and that type of thing. So we're pulling all of those together. General liability insurance, I have talked to Stacy in the risk management department. She's got some preliminary numbers from our carrier, and we're kind of expecting about $100,000 increase next year in our premium for all of our general liability coverage.
Based upon past claims?
Well, yeah, it is. I'm sure claims and,
Cost, just cost of it.
yeah, just kind of, same kind of considerations that our homeowners and automobile claims or personal ones are kind of based on. So. But yeah, obviously claims have a big impact on that.
I have just a question that's not necessarily about the budget, but on 24, it shows that we have like 10 openings for police officers. And then when you flip over here, it's almost like, we've almost like 34 or 35.
Yeah.
Is that we're adding positions or we've lost that many?
Oh, yeah, we're down,
Yeah.
yeah, we're down more.
Administration.
When you go through here, 24, we had 9 positions open for police officers. In 25, it's like 34. Have we lost that many, or are we adding?
Some of those aren't police officers, those are, those are civilian positions also. But yes, we've lost more, yeah, because we have a mandatory retirement, and so we're retiring more than we're backfilling with new officers.
Good questions. And I know another council member has requested some additional information about public safety staffing. And we're gonna be pulling that together, and I would expect Monday and Tuesday, that will probably be discussed in more detail. Right now, we've just kind of captured what's been requested,
Yeah.
so that's kind of where we are, so.
You look like Nibentech and Liaison and stuff like that, those are civilian staff. But there's a police officer 4, but police officer 1 and 2, those are certified officers. But yeah, because we have, TCRS has a mandatory retirement age and years of service, and so we're retiring out more than we're hiring right now. And like I said, the chiefs can talk more about that than I can. They deal with it on a daily basis.
Okay, give me 1 second, kind of get over that. Okay. Any other questions at this point before we move forward? Excuse me.
Mhm.
No? Okay. Well, the next thing that I had on the agenda, was, to kind of update everyone where we are on the capital budget request. And the mayor starting those around.
Magnifying glass out.
So I think you've seen this summary report before. So the departments are kind of down the left side, the item requested kind of in the middle, new or replacement, and then we've got FY '25 request at this point, and then we try to update, our ongoing 5-year plan each year when we do this. So you see some numbers regarding, what would it be, 26 through 29, but we're gonna kind of focus on FY '25. I would point out just one note of clarity, because we're, you know, vehicles are, as you would expect, usually a big number in the capital budget, obviously. So some years we've done it with both this year. So what we pulled out vehicles over to the right here, so you can see them easily, but they're already in the FY '25 total. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the way we've elected to do it.
Yeah, I think we did that, what, 2-3 years ago, Bobby, when we
Yeah.
had, interest rates were a whole lot better than they are now, and it made more sense to do a CON, capital outlay note, to
Right,
get police cars in than it did to wait to
Right.
budget for it, but.
exactly. So, so you flip on over, I'm trying to find the page, go through, all the way through page 5, and then maybe further. Let's see, page 6. And we do have a category down here that's in red. This was just mainly to help us make sure we don't overlook something through the process. It's called non-department specific. There's some items in there. If you look on page 7 at the top, we do have a couple of these. Street paving is in at 3.5 million, and bike and pedestrian infrastructure is in at 1 million at this point. And at the top of page 7, you would see the total request at this point for FY '25, that would be funded through the capital outlay fund. My contacts are old, my eyes are bad, but I think it's
49,163.
Does that include those sidewalk expenses going down Highland and Parkway?
So we don't have any going, so not down Highland, no, we don't have any of those yet. So airways, we're gonna use, surface transportation bridge funds for that, and
Mhm.
so, that's why they're not in there. Parkway is in red, that'll be 50,000. I think we have those in STB, Surface Transportation Bridge Fund. I can't say the acronym because I get tongue-tied on it. And then if you look also too, so if we're just talking about the matching the revenues to the expenses as well, hold on, there was a place for the grant piece. There's $1 million or so.
Yeah, I think what's in here is the
Yes,
the
it's-
match.
yes, all the
North
expenses.
Parkway, multimodal match.
No, I was talking about the grant for the parks was also, yes,
Well,
if you look on
that's-
the bottom of page 3,
Yeah,
this is the total amount for the parks as
Yeah.
well, and so it doesn't include, that includes also what would be the cost that we're gonna get from the grant. And so that's $1,080,000, so you take $1,080,000 out of that, and then there's some other funding sources that are coming from other areas. And so if you're matching revenue to expenses, it's not as clean cut as taxable revenue to expenses there, so there's different revenue sources.
a good way to think about what the mayor just said is before we get through, you'll see an income statement,
Yeah.
a financial statement on the capital outlay fund. You will have an estimate of our fund balance at the end of this year that would carry over to next year. I have to point out, though, we will also be adding to this list here before we get through, items that were budgeted in FY '24 and have been encumbered by a contract or a PO, but will be paid for next year, right? So we'll be adding those to this list, but you will also see funding sources for the capital outlay fund next year. The mayor's referred to some grant funds that will help fund some of this. So there will be, and I guess it's the men's homeless shelter that
Mhm.
we've got funding for that,
Yes.
right? For some level of
Mhm.
funding. So this is sort of a request, but as we move through the budget process, it'll be easier to understand this when you can see, that basically that income statement for the capital outlay fund.
So are those sidewalks in this next year's budget?
They're not in this capital budget because they're in a project budget, and so
Okay.
we don't know the exact time. And so because they're from a state grant, that's in a different bucket that's not in a capital, the STDBG funds are not in a capital outlay budget, and so they'll go to the grant funding,
Okay,
which
that
is
makes sense.
a state project, essentially. And so we'll pull from that. That'll be an MPO allocation for those
Okay.
STBG funds. I can say that right, I can't get it out of my mouth.
Um, I'm sure we will flesh out Monday and Tuesday some of the questions that you guys are asking now, good questions about the capital budget, probably and the staffing budget. That'll, we'll know, understand things a little bit better, we'll say after Tuesday.
Yeah, I found about 6 positions in here we're gonna have
Yeah,
to take out
yeah.
before Monday anyway.
Okay. So that's where we are on capital, and, had a couple other, items to talk about, and then we'll save time for questions if we need to go back. to-
Are there things, Mayor, that you want in the capital budget that are not there because of funding?
I mean, yeah, I got a wish list.
Yeah.
Money's only just money. Our department is, I mean, they, you know, obviously, I think we talked last, I got the last list, it was almost $33 million of their request, and we're down to right at 16 with, you know, some other funding resources, so. With, you know, looking at, you know, realistically a $14 million capital budget.
Okay. But that's some tiny print.
I know, I'm sorry.
No,
I did this in a hurry, and I tried everything I knew to get this to print larger, but, you know, it is tiny print, but anyway. This is the debt service schedule.
yay.
For all of the city's current existing debt, and it's kind of by year and by type of debt issue, so I think the first year that's on there is actually, so, yeah, so FY '25 is,
Lord,
yeah, I'm sorry, I'll have some better.
that is the smallest print.
We can send the, Bob, we can send the spreadsheet out,
Yeah,
because that's easier to see, obviously, you don't.
yeah,
Yeah, me.
okay.
Well, you can't see that?
Barely.
I got you.
Frank can't see it either.
Mm-hmm, I have new lenses.
So,
New eyeball?
FY '25, the year that budget we're working on right now, the total debt service is about $6,467,183, something like that.
Dr. Toy.
This year we're in right now, FY '24, the total debt service is almost 12.5 million. So the takeaway from this is, the way our debt has been structured historically and kind of planned for this, and we've been looking forward to this year. So there's about $6.5 million,
Yeah,
about
so-
$6.5 million.
So the debt service for FY '25, $6,467,103, and then this year's $12,475,792.
So with no lines, we go all the way over here to
Yeah.
see?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's about
Okay.
$6.5 million or so.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, that is good
Wonderful.
news. And I also, well, you can see, this runs our debt out through, it's maturity, so if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
We were paying 2.5 million in interest. Oh.
On money, so,
Mm-hmm.
And so what is this CRA part at the bottom, Bob?
yeah. Good question. So what happens on that, back when the CRA was created, whatever year that was, 2010? 9 or 10, something like that. To kind of kickstart that, the city secured a HUD loan, I don't remember the principal amount or whatever, to kind of get the CRA started. And what happens from that, the debt service on that is funded through our CDBG grant, right? And since the CRAs were created by the city and the cities really own the debt, right? So this has to be reflected on our books.
Okay.
So we make the debt service payment through the CRA fund, and we receive the same amount of revenue in reimbursement from the CDBG grant. Yeah, I'll work on the size of this. I knew that was gonna be a problem. So, yeah, the good news is, we got substantially lower debt service requirements next year than we've had in recent years, which is a good thing. So right now, the debt service fund is funded through the property tax at this point. Okay. Any questions about that?
Interesting that the interest rate or the interest that we pay doesn't go down as dramatically as we cut the debt in half, and we're still paying 1.8 million.
Yeah, well, most of the remaining debt, most of it is the bonds,
Okay,
2019 bonds.
okay.
You might remember back in 2019, I think we refinanced refinanced about $56 million in debt, if I remember right.
Yeah, we were
And
variable
we
rates.
issued $6 million maybe,
Mhm.
small.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, while y'all are thinking about that, just got one more piece of paper to give you.
Is
Little
the print big?
smaller
No,
print.
yeah.
That's just smaller paper.
I think
Same print, smaller paper.
as smart as I'm done.
Yeah, like Christine Lee, it's like, no, it's kind of like Christine Lee.
Really big print, little tiny paper stuff.
They put these in so I can see far away and up close.
So before I hand this out, what this is, I'm gonna give you
This one
a,
is,
basically, this is the template for the budget
yeah, it is.
that we're required to attach to our ordinance and send to the state for their approval. This is kind of the format it has to be in. So the first report, which is a little bit shorter, is on the revenue. The revenue report, and, this is great. So I'll start this around. But here's the deal, on here now, could I say one of those? Yeah. Okay, I really didn't intend for us to print the annualized numbers. So really what you need to look at, what you really need to focus on really is just the FY '23 column.
That goes in your,
So when we submit our budget for FY '25 to the state, we have to provide them FY '23 actual numbers, audited numbers. That's what's on this report. And then we have to provide them projected numbers or annualized numbers for FY '24 and then FY '25 budget. So the reason I wanted to give you this is because this has the new account numbers for Tyler Munis, and some of them look a little different. I wanted you to go ahead and have the FY '23 numbers. You can look at those numbers, but don't spend any time looking in FY '24 or FY '25 column at this particular point. And I thought this might be a document if you wanted to jot some questions down about a particular account number or something, might be a way for you to be able to do that. So, I'll pass around a few of these expense reports.
y'all look on the spreadsheet for the expense, to give you what we're dealing with, the first column is our legacy account number, and then the second column is for the new Munis, same account, two
Yes.
totally different numbers we had to report on for what we're looking at, so.
So, you know, that's a pretty thorough update of where we are on the budget. Actually, I would say this, Mayor, for, you know, your benefit, council members' benefit, timeline, we're kind of, we're not that far off behind where we normally are. You can't finish the budget as early as you would like to, and you don't want to finish it too early. Unfortunately, because of the computer thing, we don't quite have all the information that we normally have at this time that would normally make it easier to get from where we are normally at this time to completion. So we do have some challenges that we still have to work through the next 5 weeks or so. But I think we should still be on target, hopefully, to have the budget ready for first reading at the July city council meeting. Then we'll have to have a call meeting for the second reading. But we do have a lot of work to do and some challenges to get there. Any questions today that I didn't at least address some way?
I'm bringing Monday. It's gonna be
We need some 2 liters.
gonna be long.
You're the chair.
Anything else we need to address as a committee? Johnny, are you still with us? He must have muted us. Okay. No other agenda or item to discuss? Is there a motion to,
I make a motion.
motion and a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are dismissed till Monday.
Reach out to me.
For dismissing this to Monday.